So we'll do this by starting with the trusted host technique. This is actually a less secure technique, but it's easy. There's some caveats about it. You know, you're essentially passing off your credentials to an unknown computer, and heaven only knows what it's going to do with them. So a more secure technique is to set up an SSL listener. Now, this is going to require us to get a certificate, install it, and make sure that both the originating computer and the remote computer trust that certificate. I'm also going to show you how to attach that certificate to a WinRM HTTPS listener and close the loop on this whole thing and make it happen. So here's what I want to simulate, or actually perform. I'm not simulating anything, we're going to really do it. I want to go from this computer via remoting to this computer. No trust relationship here. Now that means a couple of things are going to happen. It means that by default, my computer is not going to be able to verify the identity of whatever it is I connect to. I mean, it's going to send packets to that IP address, but it won't actually know that that computer is answering that IP address. In other words, I won't have mutual authentication. I need to fix that. And I'll either fix it by disabling the need for mutual authentication, which is what we'll do first using the trusted hosts list, or provide a mechanism for mutual authentication that doesn't rely on a shared Active Directory trust. And that mechanism is going to be SSL. So I'm actually going to request, download, and install an SSL certificate. Now, what I'm going to be doing is going to require me to go to a certification authority, an external one, and request a certificate. If that's a commercial CA, that might involve you paying for that certificate. You could also use internal CAs, and that makes a lot more sense, particularly if you can set up Active Directory Certificate Services, ADCS. It's free. It comes with the operating system. And if you use it in its Active Directory integrated mode, then you can actually have ADCS issue a certificate to every computer in that domain. And it'll be automatically installed and all ready to go. So you can make it very, 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 very simple on yourself by doing that. And it does not require a gigantic PKI setup. You know, you don't have to set it up so that it can issue email encryption or smart card certificates or anything like that. You can keep it simple and use it to provide mutual authentication between computers that cross domain boundaries if you have a need for that. I'll be doing the majority of this nugget on my Windows 8 computer running PowerShell version 3. That's mainly for convenience because some of the administrative tools I need are already installed on this computer. Everything I'm going to be showing you applies to version 2 of PowerShell as well. So I really just want to do a quick and dirty way of getting to that foreign domain controller, and that quick and dirty way is usually to use the trusted hosts list. So let's get in and do that. I'm going to change to my WSMan drive, go to my local hosts WSMan configuration, get down to the client piece, and you'll see that I have this trusted hosts item which is empty. Now you can tell this is an item because it takes a string value. If this was something I could change into like a directory that contained additional items, it would be listed as a container. You've got a few ways you can do this. What needs to go in trusted hosts is whatever value you plan to use to connect to that remote machine. Now right now I do happen to know its IP address, but I want to be able to connect to it using its name. Well, to do that, I need to make sure its name can be resolved to an IP address because my computer does need to get an IP address at the end of the day to physically send bits at it. There's two pieces here. You need the IP address to send stuff across the network, but you want to use the name as a way of referring to it, and so the name is what you need to trust. So, and I'm going to show you something right now, and I'll show it to you again in a minute because I'll reinforce it then, but in my local domains DNS, I have set up a conditional forwarder so that any host in the foreign.pri domain will be sent off to this IP address, which is the foreign domains DNS server, for resolution. And what that means is I should be able to resolve the foreign domain controller name to an IP address. And just to test it, okay, good, that worked. So that takes care of the name to IP address. Now I need to trust the name. Set item, path, trusted hosts, value, fdc.foreign.pri. You can also append that to whatever's already there because there's no other value in here at the moment. I'm just going to add that. Yes, I'm sure I want to do that. Now I can get a directory listing and see that that is in fact set that way. So the first thing to remember when you go to actually connect to that computer is, let's get some room here at the bottom of the screen. Let's say I just want to do a one-to-one connection. Enter PS session, computer name, fdc.foreign.pri. Whatever I type for computer name has to be what's listed here, and my computer has to be able to resolve that to an IP address. Both of those things have to happen. I also have to give it a credential that is valid on the remote computer. So I'm going to do the whole domain /username. That'll prompt me for the password. And I'm in. I didn't have to do any real mangling around of authentication protocols. This probably went with basic, to be honest with you, which is not a super good thing because I just popped my username and password across the network in clear text. I could possibly turn on negotiate. What I really want to do is not have to use this sort of ad hoc, quick and dirty way, but I wanted to show you how it works. So now that I'm here, I can run anything that that user has permission to run, and I can hit exit. Now, the only time this becomes difficult is if you want to include this computer along with a bunch of other computers. For example, let's try this. Invoke Command. Let's just give it a simple command. And we'll do computers dc.lab.pri, which is local. That's in my local domain. Member.lab.pri, also in my local domain. And fdc.foreign.pri, foreign domain. Now, that's trusted, but watch what happens when I try to do this. It can't connect to FDC because it can't process the request. I can't use Kerberos authentication. This is a little bit not helpful of an error message because the ultimate fix is if you're going to go to a computer and you're relying on trusted hosts to get you there, then you have to specify a credential, right? So the reason it says it can't get there is because it wasn't able to look this up in the local or a trusted domain for mutual authentication. If I don't want the mutual authentication, I plug in the trusted hosts, which I've done, but I must provide a credential. Now the problem is, if I supply this credential, that's not going to work on the first two computers. So some folks will just do this. No domain name. Okay, what's the password? Now it worked. Now there's a trick here. The only reason that worked is because both my lab domain and my foreign domain have a user named administrator, and that user's password is the same in both domains. That's the only reason this worked. It means each of the domain computers was able to look up, find an administrator user, and the password I supplied worked. So if you're going to be in this situation a lot, kind of synchronizing your username and password across the domains will make it easier to target computers in multiple domains simultaneously, but that's pretty much the trick you have to do. So there's that. That's trusted hosts. It's pretty straightforward. It's an easy way to do things. Keep in mind, you are giving up on mutual authentication. I don't actually know for a fact that I was sending credentials to the real fdc.foreign.pri. All it would take for someone to mess with me is hacking that DNS server, right? Remember, I put a conditional forwarder in. Open up. So if somebody was able to spoof DNS on that IP address, I would resolve fdc.foreign.pri from whatever they told me. Whatever address they gave me is the one I'm going to send my credentials to, and I'm not actually checking to see if that computer is really the one I thought it was. So this is definitely a potential security concern. You've got to be very certain that you've got control over the infrastructure and that it's impossible for someone to be spoofing that computer if you want this trusted hosts thing to be safe. So what's a lot safer is SSL. So I've moved over to my foreign domain controller at this point. I am going to open up a fresh MMC console because I want to generate a new SSL certificate request. It's also possible to do this remotely. So all you're going to do in either case is do add remove snap-in, add the certificates component, focus it on the computer account, and now because I'm on the computer, I'll pick local. If I was running this console on a client machine, I would choose another computer and provide the name of the server for which I wanted to create the certificate request. So we'll do this locally. Depending on where you run this, you'll get a couple of different options. You want to right-click over here, do all tasks, do not do request new certificate. You want to go under advanced options and create a custom request. And that's because you don't want an enrollment policy. In other words, I'm not pulling this out of my Active Directory PKI integrated certification authority. Now, if you are, you're going to have to go through that route of doing this. So exactly how you get hold of the certificate is going to depend a lot on how your environment is set up. I'm just going to cover this approach, which is using a non-AD integrated certification authority or certificate authority. I need to change some of the properties of this, give it a friendly name. The subject is important. We've got to make sure this is set to be domain is foreign, domain is PRI. Whatever I'm actually going to be using to access this. So that's the full distinguished name. And then on the private key side, my certification authority requires a 2048-bit key, and I need to make that exportable. So now we'll generate the certificate request. Just save it in a TXT file is fine. I can minimize this, and I need to go open that file now so that I can copy and paste to the clipboard that certificate request. Now I've already logged into my certification authority and told it that I want to order an SSL certificate, and I need this to be for ftc.foreign.pri because that's how I'm going to be accessing this. And now I need to paste in the appropriate CSR off of my clipboard, just making sure that's the right one. And then we'll hit continue. I need to fill in my information. Now this information, if you're using a commercial CA, does get validated. So I'm actually going to use my company name because they've already validated my identity. This is the CA I use all the time. All right, and so that'll give me all that information. Okay, put in the valid phone number and all the other information. I agree. Let's complete that order. Okay, I'm going to have to wait a little bit for that to happen. So I'll hit pause. Why don't you grab a cup of coffee and we'll wait till my certificate's ready. Okay, I've gotten word that my certificate is ready, so I'm going to come over here and download it. Let's go ahead and hit download. We'll save that. Let's put it somewhere where I can actually find it. Let's put it on the root of the C drive. That download completed. Let's open the folder. Get rid of IE here. We'll unzip this and see what's in here. What I should have is a certificate for the computer itself. That's the one I requested, as well as their Trusted Root Certification Authority. So I'm going to come back into the Certificate Management console here. I'm going to import that Trusted Root Certification Authority so that this computer trusts the certificate. I've got certificates scattered all over this computer. I need to make sure I grab the right one. Okay. And now under Certificates Personal, I can import the certificate that was actually issued to this computer. Again, just make sure I'm in the right directory. Perfect. Okay. So having done that, I'm now ready to jump into Windows PowerShell and actually set up the HTTPS listener that will use that certificate. Now in Windows PowerShell, I need to go get a thumbprint for the certificate. It's a way to uniquely refer to that certificate. easiest way is actually in PowerShell to get a directory of your cert drive, ask it to recurse, and then in here someplace, usually the last one for me, this is it. This was the one that was issued to this computer, so let's just grab this and copy it to the clipboard. So now we've got that on the clipboard, and I can use that to create my new HTTPS listener. And to do that is new WSMan instance. The resource URI is winrm / very important, config listener. And you give it a selector set. This tells it what you're going to create down there. The address is going to be all, so I want all IP addresses. And the transport is HTTPS. That's the whole point of this. And now that's going to require some configuration information, which is another hash table. The first of which is hostname, fdc.foreign.pri. It's got to match whatever's in the certificate. And then I need to give it the certificate thumbprint. And that's how it knows what certificate to go grab. So I'll just paste that in right here. And then we hit enter. Okay, it looks like it's done. So that should have created the instance. Now it's also important that you go create a firewall exception, right? Remember that port 5985 for HTTP was opened automatically for us, but 5986, we're going to have to open ourselves, and that's the SSL port. So that should be all set up and ready to use. I also need to install my CA's Trusted Root Certificate here on my client computer. This is a little bit like, imagine that you're a bartender. Somebody comes in and they look a little young, so you card them, you ask for their ID, and they hand you a state-issued driver's license. And you look at it and you go, okay, I'm going to trust that this accurately reflects your age because I trust that the state did a good job of checking it. And frankly, if they didn't, it's on them. They're the ones who are going to be upset at me if it's wrong. So it's on them. So you let them drink. Now let's say another person walks in, also looks a little young. So you ask them for some ID, and they hand you their Boy Scout ID card. And you're like, look, I appreciate that you're a Boy Scout and all that, but this is just a piece of paper that someone printed off on their computer at home. I have no guarantee that they actually checked your identity or your age. So I'm not going to accept this. You can't drink. What that means is you don't trust the certification authority. You don't trust the person who issued that ID. Well, I trust the CA that I'm using, and so I need to make sure my computer is aware of that trust. So I'm going to open up the MMC on the client computer, add remove snap-in. Now you don't have to do this manually. You could also do this through a group policy. You can actually push out trusted root certificates through GPOs, but I'll just do it locally here. Trusted root certification authorities. Let's import a certificate, and I need to grab, I've already copied it over here, the trusted root from them. Make sure it goes into the trusted root certification authorities store. There we go. And there's kind of a way you can check that if you want. Let's see if I can figure out how to get to the control panel in Windows 8. And we'll go to Network and Internet. I want to look at, oh, you can never figure this view out. Just show me all the icons. Internet options. Under Content, Publishers, Trusted Root Certification Authorities, I now have the DigiCert Global Root in there. See, that proves that this now trusts certificates issued by that CA. So that's the next step we needed to take. Let's get PowerShell popped open and we'll try this puppy out. The first thing I want to do is double check localhost client. Yeah, see, I've still got that trusted hosts entry in there. I want to get rid of that. Set item trusted hosts value empty string. Okay, that's gone now. So let's get back to my C drive and we can give this thing a shot. All right, I want to start by confirming that it doesn't actually work without the SSL. So let's give it a computer name, fdc.foreign.pri. Good, doesn't work. Now let's tell it to use SSL, and that does mandate that I provide a credential, foreign.administrator. And we're in. So now I actually have mutual authentication between the two machines. I know that my credential was sent to ftc.foreign.pri because the SSL certificate proved that to me, because I trust the people who issued that certificate. Furthermore, I know that my entire channel is now being encrypted because of SSL. So even if my credentials were passed in clear text, SSL took care of encrypting them for me. Now I can run whatever commands I need to run. I can exit. Now I'm good to go. Anytime I need to cross that domain boundary again, it has all been taken care of. That certificate will sit out there for however long I've allowed it to. I think my CA issues them with a 1-year expiration, so I might need to renew it from time to time. Certainly if you're using your own internal PKI, you wouldn't be limited to that 1 year. You could set it to be 5 years if you wanted to, 10 years, whatever makes sense for you. That's a really, really great system to use. It means I don't need a common authentication database between those two forests, but it means everything is still safe. Okay, that wasn't so bad, was it? I showed you the trusted hosts technique, and again, remember that this is really not considered a very secure alternative. It's very, very not difficult for a computer to spoof DNS and intercept IP addresses, and you're sending credentials. You maybe even be sending them in clear text. So you'll be very careful with that. Make sure you're only relying on trusted hosts when you are actually in control of the infrastructure and you know spoofing is impossible. And using a trusted host's value of star is a bad idea. There's no way you can possibly have control over every possible destination in the universe, and that's what star means. What's better is the SSL technique. This provides mutual authentication without the need for a shared directory. So you can cross forest boundaries, and you can also go to non-domain joined computers. I showed you how to request the certificate. Although if you're doing that on a different CA or even using your own internal PKI, that physical request process may look a little different. The basic procedure is the same though. Once you have the cert, I showed you how to install it, how to get it trusted on both ends of the conversation, and how to attach it to the WinRM HTTPS listener. Don't forget that you do need to create that firewall exception for 5986 by default. You got to do that by yourself. It doesn't happen automatically when you create the listener. It's an easy step to forget too, so make sure you have it in mind. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.